pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Thank you. Sit down. Okay, we will continue on with our work on looking at population of Indonesia, especially on Java. And today we will conclude our work on looking at solutions that the government of Indonesia is actually taking up to try to help reduce the pressure, population pressure, especially on the core island, which is Java. If you can recall from our last lesson, we looked at two possible solutions and we were able to only look at one. And today we will look at the second possible solution. And the two solutions again are, the first one, birth control and family planning. And we looked at the importance of the government of Indonesia to ensure that they also have some control on births in that particular country. And one of the ways of having control is by looking at family planning and educating its population on the impact that a greater number of people can have on the environment and the resources. Today we are going to look at the second solution that the government of Indonesia has taken, and that is on transmigration. Our information will be based mainly on page 16, 17, 18, and 19 of our booklet. And I remember giving you the work to read for your homework, information on transmigration on those pages. And I hope you've done your readings, as our lesson today will be mainly discussing the questions on transmigration that are found on page 19 of our booklet. But before we go ahead to looking at that second solution, which is on transmigration, let's look at the topic on migration generally, because we note that migration is a big topic and a subtopic that we're also going to cover into grade 12 in our work on population. Looking at migration, as transmigration comes under the topic on migration, and migration is simply to do with the movement from one place to another. People migrate, animals also migrate. But in the content of population, it is basically looking at the movement of people from one place to another. Migration can be forced or it can be voluntary. The factors that contribute to migration can be described as push factors or pull factors. Push factors are those factors that makes people leave because maybe they don't have a choice about why they have to move from one place to another. Examples of push factors will be to do with maybe natural disasters. Wars can also contribute to making people leave, whereby people have to leave a particular area because there is no choice. They have no choice, they have to go. And then we also have voluntary migration, or what we call pull factors. The pull factors are the things which attract people to a particular area. People do not have to move if they don't want to under pull or voluntary. But perhaps because of certain factors that make them want to go, they have a choice. That then will come under pull factors. We also note that migration can occur permanently, whereby people have to move and they go and stay in one particular place for the rest of their life. That is permanent migration. Migration can occur seasonally. And when we talk about seasonal migration, for example, if we look at other countries, especially perhaps in America, we have the Mexican population going into America during the harvesting time. And they go out there because they know they can look for employment and earn quick money by going out there during that season where it is harvesting or the summer season. Migration also does occur on a daily basis. Maybe some of us don't realize, but we migrate daily. Every day we migrate from our houses to school and then from school back to our homes. And if we look at the definition of migration as movement from one place to another, we're actually doing that daily. If we look at maybe countries like Japan and other developed countries, especially into their cities to work on a daily basis, from 8 o'clock, people moving in, and then from 4 o'clock, if that is when they start and they finish work, moving out. And if migration is on a very large scale, that means a lot of people moving in thousands or even in millions to the CBD to work and then out again in the afternoon, then we can describe the type of migration as commuting. People commute in large numbers to work in the morning to a central location, and then in the afternoon, they move out again. That type of migration can be classified as commuting. Okay, then we also have many different types or examples of migration. And the many examples could be emigration, where people actually move out of a country to another country, or move out of a place to another place. Then there is also immigration, where people move into a particular country or move into a place. Migration can be in the example of refugees. Migration can be international, that is between countries. It can be internal within a country or domestic. In Papua New Guinea, we also have a lot of internal migration occurring or taking place. And migration can be also in the form of transmigration. And our work for today, when we're looking at information on Java, we are going to discuss transmigration a little bit more in detail. I'd like us now to make reference to page 16 for the introduction of our work to transmigration, and then we'll go ahead to doing some activities. Transmigration. Transmigration is simply the movement of people from one place to another place, but usually within a country. When we look at in the sense of Indonesia, it is the movement of people from the densely populated islands of Java and Bali to the outer islands of Indonesia. And that is what has been described as transmigration, the movement from densely populated areas to sparsely populated areas. The concentration of Indonesians' population on 2 islands has been considered a problem for more than 100 years for Indonesia. And when I'm making reference to the 2 islands in this particular context, we are referring to Java and Bali. Those are the 2 most densely populated islands in Indonesia. No less than 60% of the country's population, they live on Bali and on Java, which occupy only 7% of the land area of the country. So when we look at the total land area of the country, Indonesia, 7% of their total land area would be both Bali and Java together. And yet, those 2 areas occupy 60% of the total population of Indonesia. This problem has been the main reason for Indonesia's undertaking an ambitious transmigration program, probably the largest ever organized by a developing country. In the 5 years up to 1984, 2.5 million people were resettled. That is the equivalent to taking over half the population of Papua New Guinea and moving them to a new country. Resettlement programs have been organized since the beginning of the century, the last century. The Dutch, they moved Javanese out to work on the estates in the outer islands, especially Sumatra, where labor was short. And in the years after independence, the government continued to support resettlement. But in the late 1970s, the scale of the program changed dramatically. And in 1978, a minister for transmigration was actually appointed in Indonesia. So they definitely saw that there was a need. And because they saw it was a need, the government then took the initiative of setting up a transmigration department so that it can cater for the movement of people, especially out of Java and Bali to the sparsely populated areas of Irian Jaya, Sulawesi, Borneo, Kalimantan, and etc. The rest of the readings on pages 16 to 19, you are going to actually do on your own. I hope you have done the readings already for homework, so this is basically skimming through so that you are able to answer the following questions. The activities for the next 10 to 15 minutes will be the rest of the information now from page 16 to 19, you are going to look through in groups of 3s or in pairs. Once you complete the readings on page 16 to 19, I would like you to answer the following questions. And the questions are, you will find them on page 19 of your booklet. What is transmigration? From the brief explanation I've given, see if you can come up with your explanation again in your discussion. Number 2, For what reasons are the Indonesians following a policy of transmigration? Number 3 or C, what problems might the transmigrants face? D or number 4, to what islands are the transmigrants sent? Question 5 or E, what is meant by Javanization? The word is actually used in the reading, so when you read through, you should be able to also define what is meant by that word, Javanization. And finally, number 6 or F, in your own opinion, is it possible for the transmigration policy to actually succeed? If so, you give reasons for your answer. And if you also think that it is not possible for it to succeed, you also come up with the reasons for why you think it is not possible for the policy to succeed. Okay, those questions you will have to discuss in groups or in pairs to come up with the answers. But before you do that, go back again to the readings on page 16, 17, 18, 19, skim through, find the answers to those questions, discuss, and have your answers written in your exercise book. As I've said, I'll give you 10 to 15 minutes to work on those, and then we'll go around the class to hear the answers for those 6 activities. We have to. Okay, class, it's discussion time. We work in groups, we can get the information done quicker. So if you can organize yourselves quickly, can work in pairs, can work in 3s or 4s or even 5s. Okay, we'll go through the answers. We'll go around from this way down. We'll start off with a question per group, and then if there is anyone else who has other answers they'd like to contribute before we move to the next question, you can also raise your hand so that we will have an opportunity to give an answer. Okay, the 5 questions or the 6 questions, we'll look at the first one. The first question is simply definition. What is transmigration? From the first group here, anyone to answer that question? Transmigration, please.
Transmigration is the movement of people from densely populated areas to sparsely populated areas.
Okay, we all happy with that definition given? Movement of people from the densely populated areas to areas which are sparsely populated. And in the context of Indonesia, transmigration is definitely movement of people from Bali or Java especially to the outer islands of Indonesia. So we check and make our corrections. Okay, good. Question number 2, Val and Dorothy, one of you to give us an answer. For what reasons are the Indonesians following a policy of transmigration?
Because 60% of the country's population live on 7% of the land, making Java a very densely populated island.
Okay, we'll double check again. You could be correct. For what reasons are the Indonesians following a policy of transmigration? She has mentioned that because 60% of the total population in Indonesia lives on Java, making that island the most densely populated island. Therefore, perhaps there is a need for the policy to occur so that some people could be moved to the outer islands. Before we move on to the next question, that is not the only reason for why the Indonesians are following a policy of transmigration. If you had read, there could be other reasons also. Around the class now, are there anyone else who discussed other reasons rather than because it is the most densely populated island? Thank you, Gideon.
Increase food production and reduce food imports.
Okay, very good.
Development in other islands. And Javanization.
Okay, double check. And for the rest of you, if you had read through, you definitely would have noted that these are the reasons for why the Indonesian government is following the policy of transmigration. The first one has been given by Val, and that is the fact that that particular island, Java, is densely populated, and to reduce the population pressure, it might be wiser to actually move some people out from that island to the outer islands. But at the same time, the aim of the policy in that country was to increase food production and also to reduce food imports. So instead of importing so much to the country, we reduce that amount by spreading the people out to the outer islands, and they can make use of the land in the outer islands to produce for themselves. So in that way, not so much is actually imported into the country because those are two islands or Javas. Okay, looking at the answers that were given also by Gideon, we'll go through again. Densely populated island, as mentioned by that group, correct. To reduce the population pressure on that island, people had to actually be transferred or moved away, and that's why the idea of transmigration was actually implemented or put in place. To increase food production also, and to reduce food imports. So if you've gone through the readings, you will see that those were the two main aims for the transmigration policy. Another important reason also for why the government of Indonesia did come up with the transmigration policy was to develop the outer islands. If you move a lot of people to the outer islands, then you can also bring development to those outer islands by providing the services, infrastructure, and etc. It's just like in Papua New Guinea when we look at the migration or movement of people from rural areas into the urban areas. Perhaps if the government of the day develops the rural areas and brings the services to the rural areas, then a lot of people may not be migrating into the urban areas or the towns and cities. Similarly here, developing the outer islands, by doing that, you bring the population out there, and the more people out there, perhaps development will go to them. And also the idea of Javanization. Later on, one of the questions will be to explain what Javanization is. And when we come to that, then perhaps you will understand what we mean by that concept or idea. But double check for question number 2. These are all the reasons that you should have listed or discussed. If you have not, then include also to what you have discussed for those reasons that we have looked at. Let's look at question number 3. Christopher, your group. What problems might the transmigrants face?
There'll be problems like the ownership of land. There'll be disputes over land, and the size of the plots wouldn't be as, the yields wouldn't be. Yeah, the size of the plots and the need for cash crop as well as food crops in many areas, the poor quality of land.
Okay, we check from the other groups. Did you come up with other maybe problems that the transmigrants might face beside the one or the ones that are Christopher and his group has given? Land disputes or conflicts between the migrants and the people who are already living and settling in those areas, and the need for materials like crops and equipment, especially if they are farming the land, they will need equipment with them. Bill.
Settlers often have to cope with local soil and weather conditions which are very unfamiliar.
Okay, we're looking at the settlers will have to actually adapt definitely to the new environment that they are moving into. Don't forget that they are coming from an urban area. Java, most of the areas there are urbanized. From one of the activities we did, we also looked at the cities or the towns. Then you found that there's a lot of cities and towns also on that particular island. So if the people are moving, they are coming from the towns and cities and they are going to go out to the rural areas. They need to make adjustments to their way of living, and also they have to adjust to the environment. It's not so much of the climate that they have to adapt and adjust to, because the climate will definitely be the same. But it's the environment that they're moving into, coming from maybe a new area or new place to, your place to a new area. So definitely correct, yes. Any other problems transmigrants might have? Mason.
It's a very expensive exercise. There might be a shortage of money.
Okay, good, yes. It is definitely a very expensive exercise, but don't forget that it's the government of the day that is actually funding this particular exercise or activity. The people then that are moving will have to be aided and supported by the government of the day in Indonesia. So sending them out there will mean giving them enough materials and capital, especially money, so that they can be able to live and adjust in the new environments. From the readings, you would have found out that the government funding is for at least 2 years. And then after that, they are expected to be able to be self-sufficient and provide for themselves. Perhaps the 2 years might not be enough in terms of what is given to the people. They might run out. They might not have enough. Their crops might not be, maybe good harvest of their crops might not occur because there might be too much rain or the soils are not fertile and etc. So the people may not be successful in settling there to be providing for themselves. So there might be some problems in terms of shortage of equipment and also capital, which includes finance or money. Any other maybe problems that the transmigrants might face? Okay, Ovio?
There may be clashes within the different cultures and beliefs.
Okay, very good. Here we are looking at cultural differences again. When we're looking at most of Indonesia, we also found out that most of them practice the Islamic religion. They're Muslims. Don't forget that religion would be about the same, but the way of living might be different. As discussed earlier on, these people are coming from the towns or the urban areas. Their way of dressing may not be maybe accepted by the people in the rural areas. They might be a little bit too fancy, or they might have a lot more compared to those in the rural areas or the outer islands. And there might be some differences then in what they are seeing and how the people are carrying on and etc. So definitely, yes, there might be some cultural differences and disagreements between the way they do things. Any other maybe problems? Gao? Any other points for discussion for that question? Mason?
Areas might be too remote for essential government services like health and education to reach those people who are transmigrated out.
Okay, yes, we're looking at the remoteness of the area. Don't forget again, we come back to the aim. The aim here is because those areas are sparsely populated and they are not the core areas of Indonesia, the government is trying to actually push or pull, ask people to move so that those areas can actually have access to the core or to the main city, which is the main city, which is Jakarta. So remoteness definitely can be a problem, and when we look at remoteness, it can be in the sense of communication, whereby these people are going out there, perhaps their link with the people in the urban areas or the towns and cities may not be well established, and they might be isolated for a longer period of time. That could be a problem, yes, the remoteness of an area. Any others? We'll have the last one then from Luisa.
Since the migrants are coming from Java, which is urbanized, when they move on to the outer islands, they lack the farming skills and techniques.
Okay, very good point here. These people are coming from maybe towns and cities or areas that are well equipped. When they go out there, they need to adjust so that their farming skills can cater for the new environment that they are actually in. So they need to be able to adjust quickly so that whatever they are practicing in terms of agriculture or farming out there is going to be suitable to them, and they are able to take out as much as they can take out from their harvest. So that's a very important point, and it's a good point made also. Okay, we'll move on to question 4. Your group. Caleb, to what islands are the transmigrants sent?
Transmigrants are sent to Sumatra, Sulawesi, Borneo, and Irian Jaya.
Okay, so good. He's listed or named a few. We check again Sumatra, Sulawesi, Kalimantan, Irian Jaya. Those are just some of the outer islands, and then all the rest that are not mentioned also could be areas that the transmigration policy is actually aiming. But the main ones would be Sumatra, Sulawesi, Kalimantan, and Irian Jaya. Now let's come to the question of defining Javanization. Susan, your group, what is meant by Javanization? Javanization is already discussed in question number 2. We also noted that it was one of the aims for why the Indonesian government is also practicing transmigration. So what is Javanization then?
Javanization is like a policy where Javanese people, when they go, especially to an island like Irian Jaya, where Irian Jaya is mostly populated by indigenous population of Melanesians. It's just in a way of ensuring that Irian Jaya remains as a part of Indonesia. This could be called
Okay, again, well explained here for us to understand what Javanization is. People are coming from Java. They're trying to ensure that the Java race is able to outnumber the Melanesian race of Irian Jaya so that they can have Irian Jaya remaining as part of Indonesia. Okay, and the concept is actually explained on page 17. And again, that was explained well, so we move on to the last question. In your opinion, from Anita, your group, is it possible for the transmigration to actually succeed? Have you come to answering that question? Question F or 6? No? Okay, Gideon, your group? Have you discussed that question? Question 6? Can we have some answers then for what you think? Is it possible for the policy to succeed? If yes, give your reason. If no, give your reason also.
No, because some villages have experienced problems because of the great variation of religion, language, and culture amongst the newcomers.
Okay, so from that group, they think the policy is not possible for it to succeed simply because of the variety of cultures and religions and etc. Perhaps some of the reasons that we have looked at here can also be used to explaining the reason for why the policy may not be able to succeed. Is there any groups that discuss that definitely the policy will or may succeed? Anyone from the class discussed in your groups saying that the policy definitely will or can succeed? Okay, the group out there. Susan again.
I think transmigration most likely would succeed because it's a continuous policy they have, and the whole population of Java would get used to it because it's something they'll have for many years. And, yeah.
Good point made. Definitely, yes. The policy may succeed because if we are looking at trying to actually help with reducing the population pressure on the core island, then it might be a good thing to actually look at and send people out. And not only that, by sending the people out, we are creating space, and not only that, we are also developing the outer areas and the outer islands which are not heavily concentrated on. It's just like, as I've mentioned earlier on, the rural areas of the country. If we work on maybe improving the rural areas and putting more funds into improving the rural areas of Papua New Guinea, we might not have problems of people having to or wanting to come to towns and cities and living here. The services will be provided to them, so there's really no need for them to actually look for those services in the urban areas. From what you have discussed and the answers that you have come up with, very good answers that we have looked at to answering those 6 questions that have been allocated. Okay, for your homework, what I'd like you to do is to ensure that, because we have done this work in groups, I'd like you to ensure that you have your answers written in your exercise book. And that's what you are going to actually complete for your homework. That will also bring us to the end of our lesson. Class, if you can stand up now, please. To the pilot teachers, our keyword for lesson 149 is transmigration. Good afternoon and thank you, students.
Good afternoon.